Welcome back to the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. We're brought to you by Pelican, built tough for all situations. Go to pelican.com. Yak Gadget, for all your fine kayak fishing accessory needs. Go to yakgadget.com. Eastport Marina, on the beautiful shores of Dale Hollow Lake. For all your lodging, kayaking, and fishing needs, go to eastport.info. Now let's get this show started.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Reel Down on Paddle and Fin. Appreciate you watching. It's Wednesday, 25th, I guess, something like that. 23rd. I don't know why I'm saying the date, because you could be watching this anytime or listening. But yeah, appreciate y'all tuning in. And tonight we have the guys from Top 3 from the Bassmaster Kayak Series. And it did say, I've always seen it before as Bass Nation Kayak Series, and Turn X, it said Bassmaster Kayak Series. So I guess these men are now Bass Masters. I like that. That's better than Bass Nation. But here we go. But tonight, for a guest host who also fished in the event, didn't get top 3, but real close, friend of the show, the Goat Whisperer himself, Mr. Mark Edwards. What's up, buddy?
Hey, man. Thanks for letting me hang out tonight.
Yeah, dude, man, you're so close. You got 8th. You're right there, like you were saying before, just a bite or two away. But glad you were able to come on and talk to these guys with me.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed in the finish I had, but it was still a fun event. And first trip to Florida, I really look forward to going to Florida again. There's some big fish.
It is, man. Florida is majestic. And this one, I was saying this before too, but like, I fished Harris Chain whenever I was in college at Montevallo, and man, this was the one event this year I went to fish. We went to Disney a couple weeks ago, so I couldn't go back to Florida. But man, whenever I saw this one on schedule, I was like, finally, a kayak. It's a great kayak place too. I know it's sometimes hard to do events in Florida because it's such a long drive for people. I totally get it. But man, Harris Chain is even a whole lot better. I've never fished the Kissimmee Chain, but Harris Chain's legit, and a lot of options, a lot of ramps, a lot of just great fishing. So yeah, it's really good one to put on schedule. So props to Bassmaster for doing that.
I'm glad I went. I really am.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so here we go. Let's get on the guys. We have first place, Justin Largan, Brandon Berlinski.
Yep.
All right, there we go. And Todd Patrick with the Dangerous Trophy. What's up, guys?
Hey.
How you doing?
Good. Well, thank y'all for being on the show. Appreciate it. We'll go ahead and get started. I don't think none of y'all have been on before, huh?
No, first time.
Okay. Yeah. Mark, you have, but you're a host. You don't get to say who you are. We'll start with you, Justin. Tell people about yourself, what you do for fun, living, whatever you want to, and how you got into kayak fishing.
Yeah, my name's Justin. What I do for fun is fishing. I've been bass fishing for a long time. I was probably 12 or 13 when I got the bug. And then I guess it's been about 10 years now. I saw some of Chad Hoover's videos that he was putting out, and thought the kayak fishing looked interesting. And at the time I had a little John boat. And once I kind of got my first kayak and got in it, I stayed in it. I don't think I ever used that John boat again. So I've been loving fishing from a kayak for about 10 years now.
Cool. And what kind of kayak are you in? It's always a good question.
I'm in a Hobie. I've got the Hobie Outback.
Outback, all right.
I'm resisting the urge to get a motor. I'm trying to do it old school.
Yeah, I was fighting it, but next year it's finally going to happen. I'm not putting it off anymore. It's time. There's been like the bass event on Pickwick last year. Almost did it for me because I really think I got to check, but I could have done better if I would have had a motor. But I got lightning. There's tornadoes coming through, so I might put on my tornado helmet. I'm down here in the basement, so at any time I could go under this table. So just a heads up. But yeah, so I'll quit with my stories. Todd, how about you, man? We've seen you on KFL and everything else. Owner of the Nashville Shiners, and now the man with a Razor's Edge trophy. How you doing?
How you doing, man? Yeah, Tennessee Shiners now actually renamed.
Tennessee. I'm sorry.
So yeah,
Oh,
we've got
y'all took over the whole state. All right.
Yeah, we just went ahead and just claimed Tennessee. So
There you go.
Todd Patrick, Cincinnati, Ohio. To be more specific, Fairfield Township, Ohio, just north of Cincinnati. Man, got into kayak fishing late 2018. Fell in love with the sport. Kind of started my own little club up in Michigan and Ohio called Myo Kayak Anglers. That got to be overwhelming, and I wanted to fish more. So I started fishing more last year with traveling the country with my buddy Eric Siddiqui. Those of you would obviously know him.
4th place. Yeah, and he tied you, got 4th place in the event. So
Three-way tie, yeah.
Yeah, 3-way tie. Y'all two and Eric. So you
Yeah,
didn't make the show, Eric, but you got the big trophy the other week before that, so you'll be all right.
Yeah, he was fishing over on Carlton, but yeah, I went and fished Little Harris and fished out of a boat that I sold last year. Is a 2017 Hobie PA14. My buddy let me use it for this tournament. And it's Jackson Orr's first Hobie PA. I call it the Jackson Orr edition. We've had him sign it. So that boat has some good mojo. Jackson actually got second at the national championship at Gunnersville out of that boat. So
did you? I just have to ask right now. Did you go back up into that little creek in Little Harris where it goes back in the back there?
Or I did not.
No?
I stayed on the edge of the main river, of the main lake there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right.
Yeah, just south of the ramp there on the lower east side.
Okay, okay. Well, we'll talk about that, but I've been there. I love that. I love all of the Harris chains, so I'm just dying to talk about it. And Brandon, how about you, man?
Yeah, I've been into fishing and the outdoors from a very early age. My grandpa in particular, he taught me how to fish. I was born in Oregon, Southern Oregon, and grew up doing a lot of trout fishing, would go crappie fishing, a little bit of bass. But then when I was pretty young, my folks moved down to Arizona, and I lived in the Phoenix area, which is kind of a wasteland for the outdoors and fishing. But I used to get in trouble because I would sneak into golf courses and go bass fishing. And so that's initially what got me into it, was sneaking into those golf courses. But moved back to Oregon for college and was doing a lot of salmon, steelhead, sturgeon fishing in Oregon. And then long story short, I'm now in upstate New York, and I'm right at the base of Cayuga Lake. And Cayuga is just phenomenal for bass fishing. I love it. All of the Finger Lakes, actually. I hit them all. I got involved with NYKBF about 4 years ago. A really good regional club. Yeah, Justin Hausner and team, they do a great job, and that's what got me hooked on kayak bass fishing. It was about 4 years ago, and I actually won the state championship through that club back in 2020 on Oneida Lake.
Cool.
That was my
New York claim to fame.
Yeah.
And that's kind of got my first question. Are y'all surprised that the best somebody did from the state of Florida is 9th place? Like, everybody from outside the state came in and whooped up on them locals.
I was a little surprised to see that, but also, like, I mean, that happens, sometimes people are working from history, and that doesn't always pan out. You gotta fish the moment. It's absolutely true. And that's definitely like the mindset that I have going into these tournaments where I travel. You can't let your head get out of it when you go to a new place or a new lake. You gotta just fish the moment and go with your instincts.
Yeah. I mean,
I think that's. I was just going to say, I think that actually being from an area might actually have its disadvantages, because you're going off of like prior, things that have happened for you. So the best thing to do is just to go out and to fish when you're pre-fishing, you're going to find stuff that maybe that other guy wouldn't go check, because he's going off of history, like you said, Daniel. And I think that has its major advantages for outsiders that are coming in and fishing newer lakes and having to figure it out for themselves because they're figuring out what's going on that lake at that moment. They're not going off of history.
This obviously isn't something I always pay attention to, but in the almost 3 years I've been doing this might be the first time that somebody in that local state was that far down low. But again, it's not something I'm not always looking for that. I just happened to notice it in this one. That's surprising.
I think it was the stage of the fish, because they've been beat up,
Yep.
and the spawn was dwindling really fast. I found a bunch of empty beds, so the spawn was going away, and the big fish I was catching was all post spawn, and they were kind of schooled up offshore a little bit. So I think that gives the locals maybe a disadvantage with the fish being in transition. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if they were
Not as
in the best bedding areas or something, they probably would know where they're at. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But where they were leaving the beds and stuff, they just was at a disadvantage maybe more.
And that can always be some of the toughest times when it's not like pre-spawn. Whenever they're not quite as predictable and they're in that move or they're doing a little bit of everything and they're spread out. That can definitely be a little bit tougher time.
I paid attention to both the Bassmaster Elites event and the FLW event that happened right before our kayak series, and I just I made a calculation that like the spawn was not going to be a factor. It was going to be mostly post spawn, so I didn't even bother like looking for beds or spending that much time on that. So I was really trying to figure out some sort of offshore bite.
That's the same as what I did. That's my thought process too. Was the fish done got beat up on beds too much to even. I love the bed fish, but I wasn't going to try to figure that out. And then I tried in the area, because I fished it, I guess 2.5 days. So I did try to find everything I could find in that area.
Yeah.
It was still a grind. I mean, I don't know how many. I mean, I only got 6 fish in a boat, so I don't know how these other guys
I only
did.
got my 5.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
I had about 15 or 16 fish.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
Oh.
Todd wins. I think I had maybe nine that I actually landed.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and start with practice. Justin, how was practice for you?
Practice was interesting for me.
Where do you fish, if you don't mind me asking?
In the tournament, I fished Trout Lake.
Trout Lake?
Yeah, I think it's the smallest lake on there, and you can't get into it with there's only I guess if you've got a bigger boat, there's the only way to get in there is this little small ramp. There's only a couple of parking spaces in the lot. There were a few John boats in there on Sunday because I went back just to check it out, and but it's not easy to get into, and I don't think a bass boat could get under this little railroad bridge to get in there from the main lake. So I think that helped me. Those fish hadn't been beat up by all the pros for the last month.
Wow. Were you the only kayak angler there during that tournament?
There was one other guy. I met a guy, Danny from Jersey, but he was actually going under that bridge, and he was fishing in Eustis. But it was kind of interesting. I didn't think that the spot I had in there was that great. My plan initially was just to hit it in the morning, try and get a few keepers off of it, and then I was going to go back. If I couldn't get a limit there, I was going to go back and try and pick off a couple males that were in the other area that I'd found on a different lake. So I told him, hey man, if your stuff doesn't work out, over in Eustis, there's I pulled out my phone and showed him exactly where I caught my fish, and I really didn't think I'd be there by the time he got in there in the afternoon, but it ended up, about every time I was thinking about leaving, I'd catch another fish and ended up staying there all day.
Wow.
But practice was practice. I was in a different area, and I found just in one of these canals, I found several big bedfish. I've had them. I know it's kind of a gamble to go after those bedfish. They can be real, they can be there one day and gone the next day. Somebody else can beat you to them in the tournament.
If you can catch them.
Yeah, if you can catch them. And I went in there, and I wasn't fishing with the hook. I just used a little screw lock and a I had just a missile quiver worm, and I was pitching it. When I'd find, and they weren't all stacked in real close together. It was probably I don't know, mile and a half stretch that I was on, and I had maybe 10 different waypoints on there, but they were big fish. I hooked one of them just because I knew I'd be mad if I didn't catch at least one, and I kind of wanted to know it. Sometimes I big eye them, I look at a 3, and I'm like, it's a 5. And, sometimes it's the other way around, but I hooked one and landed it, and it was 7, 23 inches. So I knew they were big. I left them alone the second day. I was able to get 2 other ones to bite the rig with no hook. But when I went back on Friday, they were gone. And, I couldn't find, I tried some other stuff in the area, just pitching the grass and stuff, and I couldn't get bit. So I ultimately just decided to bail on that area and try the only other area that I'd been able to find anything was trout.
Here's a question. If bass, does everybody prefer a 2-day event? I'll ask that first.
I do.
Yeah.
For this one, I was fine with it being a 1 day.
Yeah.
I would have been fine if it would have been like a 7-hour or a 6-hour tournament.
I feel like, having won a 2-day event, you got to put in the work. It's not just like, in some ways, like, I'll be honest, like coming in second in this Harris chain event, in some ways, I feel like I got lucky. Like the cards fell in a good way for me. But I feel like with the 2-day event, the championship that I won on Oneida Lake, like I put in the work. Like, I had to, the thing that I caught him on the first day was not panning out the second day. And I had to figure it out the second day, totally different. And so I feel like I really earned that. Not that I didn't earn this on the Harris chain, but a 2-day event really like kind of separates the cream from the crop.
If they're going to have a 1-day event, why not? Should it be on a Sunday? So then that way people burn one less vacation day.
Well, with traveling, you're not going to make it back to work.
You're going to burn it Monday on your way back.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
What if you live in Florida and you got 9th?
I work on Sundays, so I have to burn 2 more days.
In my opinion, all national trails being Bass, Hobie, and we can also include the new up and coming All American Series because that's getting some traction as a national series. But
not South National. They're not. I'm not putting down All American Kayak Series, but the same way Bass doesn't go to the north, All American doesn't come to the south.
Right, but meaning as in the top 4 trails, if you want to call it, I think they should all be 2-day. I think it separates the cream from the crop. I think that it doesn't allow for you to get lucky and get on a school of fish and bang them out for a day. I think you got to put more time in. You got to have more spots. Your pre-fishing is more valuable. So Hobie, I think Hobie does it right, and and I think that's the model that everybody should follow.
And I want to say this again. I'm not putting down All American. I would fish one of their events, and they did come to Kentucky Lake, so it is the South. Kentucky's the South. That's questionable too, but yeah. So
Kentucky Lake goes into Tennessee, so
yeah, it is. All right. So Todd, how about your practice, man? Was it just Little Harris every day, all practice?
No, it was not. It was. I don't know.
Enjoyed it about an hour. It's not that big.
Yeah. It was. Little Harris was a wing. Wung it on Friday. Friday. Wednesday, went to Trout Lake. Went there. Shad spawn lasted until about 11 a.m. I couldn't figure out what to throw to get them to bite. The only thing I didn't throw was a fluke, and that's probably what I should have threw. Didn't work for me. I fished the same stretch that Justin fished, and I missed that bite. I actually got broke off on a donkey that came up and wrapped around the front of my boat and broke me off. And it was every bit of a 7-pounder. But that was the only bite that I had. Then I went back into Cypress. Justin probably knows, just beyond that dock that he was at with his seawall and his hydrilla and the cattails and all that, buck brush. But if you go on back, I had some bites back in there, but it was nothing impressive. I wasn't confident at all. I did catch a 2-pound caught a 2-pound crappie off of a dock on the south side of the lake. But I wasn't confident there, so we hopped and skipped around over the course of the next couple of days to the north side of Griffin, to the preserve area where super clear water. I probably saw over 100 inches there, but couldn't get them to bite on anything. The water was so clear, you got a long cast and fight the hydrilla.
Whenever I thought I was going to fish this event, I was looking in the preserve area like circle. Going to be fishing that.
On the way out to the main lake, I passed over 100 inches, but then come to find out they actually sprayed that 2 weeks ago, and I didn't know that. So that was sprayed. So that was a no-go. Went to where else?
Why would they spray that?
You went to Big Harris because I seen you.
Went to Big Harris and saw Mark there, and I guess he was trying to hide a donkey that he had got from me.
We launched at the same time, and I went over there to check that spot, and it was like, I don't know, I didn't cast for like 10 times, and I it was a 6-7 pounder, and I just dropped my rod tip because I seen him coming, and the fish jumped up there and spit it.
Yeah, but I tried that out, and I was trying the dock technique that was working on some other lakes, and I couldn't get the dock bite. I couldn't get the channel bite, and I was lost until Friday. I was ready to go home. Like I was like, I haven't had 5 bites all practice until Friday, and Friday I figured it out. My bite was the cypress behind the Kissimmee grass up on the banks. I had a bunch of buck bass garden fry off of beds, and there was the occasional female roaming the Kissimmee grass, and that's where I found my bite. And little Harris won me outright for tournament day.
There you go.
Todd, could you see him?
What was that, Justin?
Todd, you said you saw there were some females cruising. Could you actually see them in there? Was it clear enough?
It was clear enough.
Cool.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. It actually, with the south to north wind, the farther south you go, it was clearing up. The farther north you went, it was clouding up. So actually on tournament day, I decided to go south of where I was catching all my bites, but I don't know if we're on tournament day yet. But that's what I decided to do, and that's where I got the majority of my fish.
Yeah, because I think that's that little creek coming in is a natural spring coming in, so I'm sure it is
a lot of clean water coming south to north with that south to north wind that we had on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah. Brandon, how about you, man?
Yeah, so I actually I got some pre-practice in before off limits. I went up to the first pre-practice day I got in, I went over to Banana Cove because that's where everyone in the elites was getting them. And I didn't think that that's where I would actually go in the tournament, but I wanted to go out there and catch a bunch of fish. So I spent like most of a day in Banana Cove and could not get a bite. I was throwing everything at them. I was using those hybrid hunters that Hanselman was using, and chatterbait, lipless, you name it. I was throwing around Banana Cove and couldn't get a bite. So that for me kind of just ruled out Harris and Little Harris. Like, I know that that's just one small stretch, but I was just like, I'm not going to bother. Like, this has just been hammered by the elites. And then the next day I went up to Griffin, and I actually got on a flipping bite up there and got a couple of decent fish. I was up by the Emeralda Marsh area, and that was a good time. That was pretty cool. But so that was before off limits, and then actual practice. Well, actually, let me back up. When I got up there to Griffin, I come out of the creek that I launched out of, and I get out into like the main lake area, and there's like 20 wrapped boats all out in this lake, all out in this flat. And I was like, something's going on. And I totally missed the memo that there's an FLW event. And so I like looked it up on my phone, and I was like, oh, FLW's here this weekend. And all of all of those boats, all like 20 of the boats were throwing crankbaits and lipless crankbaits. It seemed like they weren't really getting into them. I was fishing around them for a couple of hours, and I was throwing a lipless for a while and get a bite. And then I just went over and beat the bank, and that's when I got onto the flipping bite. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm onto something. First day of practice, Wednesday, I went back to that area on Griffin, and I spent the whole morning doing flipping the bank. And I got a couple of dinks, but ultimately I just decided like it's not my strong suit. I don't do a lot of flipping. I'd like to get better at it, but it's really not my strong suit. And so I just decided like when I wasn't getting the fish anymore, that's not how I wanted to catch them. So I ended the day on Eustis. That was the first day of practice. Eustis, I was like mostly graphing and trying to find some shell beds. Again, that's not something that I'm really used to. That's the first time I've been in Florida. And so like, even if I found some shell beds, I don't know that I would really know how to fish them. So I ultimately ended up in Apopka. I spent the last 2 days of practice in Apopka. And kind of my thinking with that was that's such a long run for the elites and for the FLW guys that the south end of Apopka probably got the least pressure out of most of the areas, except for maybe like Trout Lake where you ended up in Austin.
Yeah.
So,
they had to go through a lock too, right?
Yeah, and it's a small lock. It only lets in 3 boats at a time. And so I know like the elite
Scott
event,
Martin and
Scott Martin and all those guys, like they had a really long wait to get through that lock. So I know that was like a calculus for them in not going to Apopka. And the other thing that kind of like cued me in on Apopka was Christian Greco, who ended up winning that FLW event. He caught his final day bag out of Apopka. He hadn't been fishing there for most of the tournament. It was just the final day. And, they reset the weights. And he fishes the area. He's pretty like, I don't know if you watch his YouTube or like follow his Instagram, but like he spends a lot of time in Harris. And so he kind of like threw an audible and he decided to go down to Apopka. And I was like, maybe something's going on down there. And so that's kind of what cued me in on that. I was like, I'm going to go check that out. And I got on a bite like pretty quickly on the south end of Apopka. Again, I was trying flipping again because, I want to get better at that. And that's how Christian was catching them. I couldn't catch anything on a flipping bite during practice or during the tournament. But I ended up ultimately getting them on, basically shad imitations and working hydrilla. So I started getting them in practice. The last day of practice, I got a limit pretty quickly, like within 2 hours. And then I left that area and started exploring some other areas. And so I had one spot and basically like, one technique, one, thought process. I didn't have a plan B, but thankfully it held out on tourney day. But yeah, it was all south end of Apopka for me.
Why the south end? Just where the grass is? I've never been in there.
Yeah, it was a good launch as a kayaker. And then also it just was the furthest away from what I thought the elites and the FLW guys were hitting. And I only saw one other kayaker down there, and I saw very few other bass boats down there. So I just like to get away from the crowds if possible. So that was kind of my thinking with that.
Well, I mean, it seems like that's kind of what y'all did. You were south end of there. Todd was in Little Harris. I mean, it may not, I'm not saying there was no other kayakers, but I mean, that's the most isolated part of, you have to go all the way around to get into Little Harris. And then Justin, you were on someplace I've never even heard of, and I've been there. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. And Mark was fishing, Harris.
I wasn't far from the boat ramp.
All right. So we'll talk about tournament day. We'll start with you, Patrick. You got Todd, you got third place. Again, tied with both Brandon and Eric. But yeah, we'll start with you, man. Yeah, so your practice going pretty bad. Friday, a little bit of something. Saturday. All right.
Saturday, for some reason, I pull up to the boat ramp, and I'm traveling with Mike Fink, my buddy out of Dayton, Ohio. He's my travel buddy. Him and Eric Siddiqui were my travel buddies for the weekend, and Eric decided, all pre-fishing. He was off on his own. Me and Mike were pre-fishing, kind of the same areas, but we'd split off and everything. And got there actually it was the night before fishing, and I'm looking at the map, and I'm like, man, South Harris looks really good south of the ramp. And in Little Harris looks really good. And I was like, it looks like it's similar to what I was fishing north of the boat ramp. So I'm like, you know what, I'm going to check that out in the morning and then go back north as the day progresses. And it was the shaded side of the lake. So it stayed shaded until 9:30, 10 o'clock. So I decided to go south, hurried up, launched with about 9 other kayakers, believe it or not.
Wow.
And
there's like shell beds in South Harris. Is that
there? Yeah, I found a shell bed, but couldn't get them to eat anything on my Carolina rig. And there were some nice sized fish out there that were worth chasing. But I couldn't get that shell bed bite to work for me, so I left it alone.
Yeah.
So I went down there. I had a top water tied on. It was like a white spook. Threw that a couple times, had blow ups on it, missed both hook sets. Second time I had a hook set after I'd gone south, to start the day. It was around the lily pads. I'm like, you know what, this isn't me. I've never caught a fish on top water in my life. This isn't my style of fishing.
Yeah, you got to get a buzz bait, man.
I had buzz bait, but I hadn't heard of any buzz bait bite really going on from anybody in any of the chatter or anything. It was just not what I had. So
yeah.
I decided to bust out the trusty KVD 5-inch Ocho Okeechobee Crawl Senko wacky rigged, and I flipped into the base of like a cypress tree that had come off on a point, sat there and just jigging it, and had a major thump, and it was my 22 1/4 first fish of the day, and I got it in the boat and was like, let's go, and like all pumped up and everything, and I was like, all right. I was like, hey, maybe I'm going for $500 today, because guys,
right, yeah.
I'm very novice bass fisherman. I don't have the history that these guys do. I've literally been doing it since late 2018. I've not had the history with my family or as a kid bass fishing. That it was nothing that I ever did. I was in
Ohio.
Yeah, I was in Ohio. I'm into football, baseball, playing sports, team sports like that. And fishing was never really anything on my radar. So I'm still learning. And I got my friend, Eric Siddiqui, teaching me, like, this is what you hear and this is what you look for. And I'm learning and I'm gaining all this knowledge and putting things together. And so I went wacky rig. And I'm like, you know what? After that, I'm not putting it down. After I had that hook set, I wasn't putting it down. When I started so I decided to start heading towards the boat ramp after that catch. Kept basically beating the bank, wacky rig. Had a 12 1/4 was my next fish. Caught that probably like 15 minutes later. And then about 25-30 minutes later after that, I caught a 19. And the rest was history. I had 81 1/4 inches or something by 8:24 a.m. So an hour and 9 minutes into the tournament, I had a limit, and I had to sit there and watch people catch me all day long. I was able to upgrade up to the 88 3/4 on some other fish, throughout the day. But once I got north of that boat ramp and got into my bite that I'd found on Friday, I only upgraded once with a 16 1/4 inch fish. Those fish weren't really there like they were on Friday. So I went and hit up some canals and things like that. I got broke off on a nice fish in the canal. I'm not going to say that would have helped me enough to catch Justin. I needed a 20 or something, somewhere around a 20 to catch him. I think he beat me by 4.5 inches, but I think I had him on big bass. But I'm not going to say that was a winning fish. Not going to say that because I don't know, but it was a nice bite that hurt to lose. I wasn't able to fish 100% clean, but that was the only fish I've lost all day. But man, it was a fun ride, man. I've never led a major tournament before. I've never had a 5-fish limit in a tournament before. I mean, this is just all a bunch of firsts for me, guys, and it's just I don't feel worthy to have this in my house.
Hey man,
this is, but
you paid the money. You paid the money. You caught the fish, and
yeah,
you should be damn proud of that, man. I don't have one of them blue shark trophies behind me.
Yeah, but I mean, I'll take it, and I'm gonna use it as a learning experience and try to build off of it, and let my confidence grow, and try to learn to maybe be able to compete with these guys that we all qualified for the Bass Master Kayak Classic Championship next year in Tennessee, and I'm going to hopefully give you guys a run for your money. But man, this is just an awesome experience for me, and I'll never forget it. But my tournament day was short and sweet. It was over early, and I couldn't get that upgrade that I needed as I watched Justin slowly catch me and pass me and shatter my dreams. But no, man, that was awesome what you did there on trout, because I was there. I just couldn't get the bites that you got. And I didn't catch on to the bite that you had found there. So hell of a job, and Brandon, to you also, and everybody else in the field, man. It was an awesome experience, and I'm looking forward to Smith. Smith Lake and whatever the other bass tournament is. I'm going to go to the rest of them.
Grand.
Yeah, Pickwick's a 2-day actually in October, and then Graham down in Oklahoma. So I'll be at all 3 of those for the rest of the year. I'm going to try to catch Justin and AOI.
There you go. What was I going to say? I don't remember. All right. But congrats, man.
Hey.
Brandon, how about you, man?
Yeah, so started off the morning. I had this little stretch in a Popka that I felt pretty good about. Obviously it had showed out in practice. And I didn't beat it up too hard in practice. And so, that was my game plan, was to just stay in that area. And so, first thing in the morning, because it was, kind of dark, I was trying some topwater. I hadn't gotten anything on topwater. And turning morning, again, didn't get anything on topwater. I was throwing a buzzbait. I was throwing a whopper plopper. I figured anything that I got before basically 8:30 was going to be a bonus, because we started, I think first cast was 7 or 7:15, and it was pretty dark that early. And my bite during practice was really only picking up when the sun was hitting the water. So I worked this area for a while, didn't get anything. And then, kind of what I figured out in practice was, when I was out a little bit offshore on this hydrilla flat in 3 to 4 feet of water, I was getting them on a chatterbait. But then I was also getting a pretty good bite pitching a swim jig up into kind of the thicker cover around the shoreline. So pitching it around the reeds and pitching it around visible grass. So that's how I started my morning, and I got my first 2 fish pitching. It was a Gambler 1/2 ounce heavy cover swim jig with an X-Zone mega swammer.
X-Zone.
Yeah.
X-Zone.
So all white. It's again it's the shad bite that these were my 2 baits here. So I was pitching that Gambler jig up into the kind of heavier cover and the reeds and stuff, and that's where I got my first 2 fish. I lost one other good one. I actually saw it go after, and the bite was great, and that's how I knew I was onto something in practice, because they were choking it every single time. With the chatterbait, with the swim jig, I had to just haul ass on my reel to catch up with these fish, because when they hit it, they were coming straight at me.
Yeah.
They were choking it every single time. I didn't use my net once. I boat flipped all of these fish in practice and tourney day. It was a really fun bite. So I got my first 2 fish pretty early, like before 9 o'clock. And they ended up being my smaller fish, all around like 15 something. And then once the sun came out, I started chucking the chatterbait. And again, like during practice, the last day of practice, I got a limit pretty quick in like 2 hours tossing a chatterbait. And so on tourney day, like I wasn't getting it, like I wasn't getting hit, and the bite just wasn't like coming up for me. And so I was getting a little worried. Like one factor was there was 2 guys in a bass boat that were working the same stretch as me, and they were out. I was fishing behind them, and they were working it pretty methodically. And so it kind of got into my head that they were like, they were catching my fish. But you just got to stick with it or adapt. And so I tried some new water that I hadn't tried in practice, and that didn't come up with anything. And I got my 3rd fish at 1:30, and that was the 18. I think it was 18 and a half that I got. And once that happened, I was like, okay, like maybe we're back on. Like I was starting to lose hope by like noon. But then I got that fish at 1:30, and I was like, okay, like maybe this was just a bite window. I missed it earlier in the morning. Now I'm back on it. So I got a fish at 1:30, 2:30, and then I got my last fish, the big that I got, 22 and a half. I got it 5 minutes before last cast. And I just lost my mind when I got that fish. Like the last couple of hours, I really like had to maintain like the mental focus and just have faith that the fish were there. I knew I was onto something good from practice. And so the last couple of hours, I made so many casts. I was chucking this chatterbait nonstop for 2 hours. And I really chalk it up to that I kept the faith, and I kept making casts in this area. I didn't move. And sure enough, like all 3 of those last bites that I got, they choked it. They really wanted, these white shad baits that I was throwing. So yeah, it was, I wish I would have caught fish earlier in the morning, but, it is what it is. I got the 5 bites I needed. That's all it takes.
There you go. And shout out to Greg Nosar too. I talked to him, and I think he caught his last 3 fish in the last half an hour of the day. So, even though everybody doesn't make a check, sometimes it's about those small wins that you go out and you fish an event, you learn more about yourself, and you don't give up, and then you end up with a limit or something like that. So it's not, I mean, y'all getting a check and them cool trophies, that's awesome, but not everything is a big, on a podium win. Sometimes just a win is getting a limit. So for everybody that didn't make a check in this event or whatever else, as long as you kept your head down, you worked hard, you deserve a pat on the back, a paddle and fin pat on the back.
I seen Greg around noon, and whatever time I caught my 18 and a half, he come around the bend where I was at, and I was measuring it. And I just had finished taking pictures of it, measuring it. And he said, "Man, are you catching anything?" And I picked it up, and I said, "Yeah, dude." But he hadn't had a fish yet.
Yeah.
And it might have been later than 12. I don't know. And then, he told me at the ramp he had a limit. And I was like, wow. Yeah. I know he didn't have much time.
That's cool.
It doesn't take much time if you're in the right place at the right time.
That's right.
I got to give a shout out. I actually stayed with Eric Siddiqui, Mike Fink, Christine Fisher, and Guillermo Gonzalez. And on Friday, Guillermo made those money taco or money fajitas. And man, I don't know if those things have magic or what, but I think a lot of people that had those things cashed a check on Mark. It was like a bunch of us.
There were 6 out of 9 people there cashed a check.
Yeah.
5 in the top 10.
Wow.
And you know they're lucky when a guy's never caught a limit in a tournament got top 3. So
Yeah, you're the top one out of the house there.
yeah. So Guillermo and there's money fajitas. If you guys are ever around to get those things, go ahead and see if those things are magic or not.
That is awesome that you beat all them people that were in your same house.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah,
Justin,
absolute hammers in that house.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
real.
no kidding.
Yeah. How about you, Justin? And your tiny little lake by yourself?
Yeah, it was. That was one nice thing about it, was kind of having it to myself, and I think that did make a difference. But I think something Brandon said about the mental side of it. I think that was a big factor for me, was, not getting, too down on the fact that, I'm pretty sure the bedfish that I'd seen in practice would have been the biggest stringer I'd ever caught. I mean, I think I was looking at a 30-pound stringer.
Wow.
And I love the bedfish, and the disappointment kind of getting past that and just, all right, let's go fishing. Let's figure something else out. I don't know, a year ago, a couple months ago, I don't know that I would have been able to do that the same way. I think that mental, just being able to focus and just kind of let's go have fun. I think that made a difference. But I decided not to start directly on the grass. The wind was pushing into the seawall. There were kind of 2 canal entrances, and then this I guess a seawall that ran along the edge of this development, and the wind was pushing into the seawall right at the mouth. So I decided to make a few casts at that first, and I got a couple of fish within the first, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes. I had 2. I wasn't sure how long that bite was going to last, so normally I like to upload my fish pretty quick, because Mom likes to watch, and I like to give her something to see. She likes to see my name on the leaderboard.
My kid too. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's not catching stuff. I feel more bad for her than I do for me, because she's feeling bad because I'm not catching them. And so I try to put them up, but I wasn't going to waste any time then. I wasn't sure how long that bite was going to last. But I started moving through the grass. I think the second fish actually came after I left that sort of mouth to the canal and went over to the grass. And, I made a couple passes through it. I just had those 2 bites. I'd been using a hybrid hunter. I knew
How are those?
It's interesting. I haven't thrown it a ton. I mean, I'll be honest. I got them when they kind of first came out. I heard Todd Castledine, his videos ranting about them. And there's a lot of grass on the Potomac, which is kind of my home lake. And I wanted to try them around there, because anymore, I mean, it's just everybody throws a chatterbait. And I saw what Randy Hanselman did on the Elite, so I thought, I'd give those a try. And that's pretty much what I was throwing in practice when I was in trout. And I think I had 3 or 4 bites. And normally I don't like to hook fish. I try to, take the hooks off or fish stuff without hooks. But I was kind of playing with the bait in practice, sort of figured out exactly how fast I reel it to get it to vibrate the way I wanted it to, and getting used to what it feels like. It's kind of a neat feel when that thing ticks those thick grass stems. It almost feels like it's bumping a stick or something. But I was, playing around with it in practice, and I had, I think, four that were decent, but I had one that was 21, and I don't think I weighed it, but it was 5. And I went through that stretch. I was throwing gold in practice, and I was throwing gold that morning. I decided to make another pass through it. I switched colors and went to I don't know what it's called, but it's like a white. It's got some like pink or purple hue in it. And when I made that that next pass through there, is when I got the 21 and a half, I think it was. That was my first big fish, and that kind of got me excited. I was starting to think, well, shoot, I got a good one in practice. I got this one today. Maybe there's more to this spot, and I'm going to stick around a little bit longer. I'm not going to bail on it. And it was a little while between bites after that. I tried going through it, throwing a buzz bait, mixing some stuff up. I had missed some fish on that. And then, went down that wall again and got a small, it was barely, 12 and a quarter. And then just started, I was trying to leave the grass alone for a little bit. I'd run through it a couple of times. I wanted to, give it a little bit of a rest and see if some more fish would move through. While I was going down the wall, I guess if you go past that wall, there's some reeds, some cattails, and I rigged up a rod to pitch with, and had these 6.5 inch missile quiver worms and June bug, and I was just going to pitch those around the reeds, and I did catch one, while I was doing that. Small fish didn't help me any, but I had that rod on, out. I had kind of two rods at my feet, the hybrid hunter, and I had that worm rod. And as I was going back down the wall, I saw a boil, what looked like a boil. The wind was still coming in pretty good, so you had chop. And sometimes when the waves slap up against that wall, it sounds really similar to a fish breaking. But I looked at it, and it looked funny. There was some foam right there, and I had just thrown the hybrid hunter right through that stuff. I think I'd made 2 casts right to where that boil was. So I just picked up the worm and pitched it in there, and I don't think it hit bottom. That fish started moving out with it, and that was my big fish, the 22. It jumped right next to the boat, then went onto the boat, jumped on the other side, came back to my side, and I was freaking out at that point. I'm standing up, I got the net, and when I got it in the net, I was hooting and hollering, and there was I guess it was like a pool for the community that lives right there, and there were a bunch of people there, so they were all standing up at the fence, and they got their phones, and they're ooh,
Oh,
tornado.
yeah.
Dang.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, it was kind of cool. They were all I was excited. They were excited, and they came over. One of the ladies came over to see, and I asked her to take a picture for me, so she took some photos. And I was, I put it on the board, got the official photos, and my little brother asked me later, how much did it weigh? And I was like, you know what? I was so excited, I forgot to weigh it. But it was definitely spawned out. It was probably in the 6-pound range, but that, once I had that, I knew I felt like I was one fish away from making a check. I was really surprised that the overall weights are what they were. The names in this field, there's a bunch of great fishermen that fish these things. I was, like a lot of people, thinking it was going to take 100 inches or more to win it. So winning was not really on my mind. I noticed, I checked the leaderboard when I input those bigger fish, and saw kind of where I was, but I figured I was getting in the range where I was going to get some good points, and I'd have a chance to cast a check. But I felt like I needed a couple more bites, and I kept working the wall, and probably around, I want to say it was around 1. I came up to a pontoon, and it was tied off. The wind was pushing in, and pitched to the base of the pontoon. And I let that one sit. It had to be 15 seconds. Didn't move it, and one just picked it up and started moving off with it. I tried to lose it. I hooked it, and the line got draped over the corner of the pontoon, hung on a screw or a nail or something. And I was, pedaling the one direction, had to throw it in reverse and back up, and the fish is on the surface. And I was, my vicious line held up. I had 14-pound test, and I checked it after. I couldn't find a nick or anything, but I was, when I got that fish in the net, I was really relieved. I felt like I was going to do pretty good, even if I didn't get another bite at that point. But I really thought it was going to take another, 17-inch fish. I thought I'd need at least 95. I knew there was going to be somebody that was sandbagging and put all those fish in the last little bit. But it was just really a blessed day. After those bedfish were gone, I really had no expectations, and finishing in the top, getting a check would have been great, but to come out with a win was really special.
Awesome. Well, I'll say, give everybody a chance to shout out their sponsors real quick. We got a tornado watch, so I gotta go upstairs here in a minute. But yeah, Mark, Todd, we'll start with you. Anybody you want to shout out, that makes your fishing easier?
I can hardly hear you. But anyway, if you hollered at me, I'd like to thank Fishing Online and Dakota Lithium Batteries and Stormy. He's a big supporter of everybody that's kayak fishing. And Fishing Online is too. and native watercraft. And I also like to say, you know how everybody was talking about mental. I mean, I think 75% of this tournament fishing is mental.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, I really think it's that much mental than it is actually physical skill and stuff. It's just making the right decisions.
Yeah.
And congratulations to everybody. I mean, when it's meant to be, like Justin said on these last fish, it's just meant to be. I mean, seems like almost he couldn't mess it up, even though, you know.
Yeah.
Congratulations to everybody.
Todd, how about you, man?
I'd like to give a shout out to Crotalus Rods. Rob Richards over there makes good stuff. That's a rod I was using all day, throwing my wacky rig worm. So if you guys want to check him out, makes good stuff, top notch stuff, very reasonably priced. I was using Sunline FC Sniper line, VMC hooks, and KVD Ocho worms. Hobie, man, they make the best boat out there, in my opinion. Love being in my Hobie. Not with
We're
Hobie or
all
anything
running
like that.
Hobies.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
three of them.
So,
Yeah.
so give a shout out that, I mean, to be able to go through the grass and the stuff that I went through, and that there's fins just go right through that stuff. It didn't slow me down hardly at all. Give a shout out to Hobie and what they do, and Stormy as well, man. At Dakota, make good batteries there, and Stormy's out there taking care of anglers. Even if they're not on with the team or anything, dude's got a good heart, and love to give a shout out to Dakota Lithium. And lastly, to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, man. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here. And I prayed to him, and asked him to give me the knowledge to go and throw the right things I needed to throw to catch the fish that I could fish. So if it wasn't for him, probably wouldn't be holding this thing. So that's probably my biggest shout out right there.
Amen.
All right. I'm sorry, I gotta cut you all short. We're under a tornado warning. It's coming right this way, so
Be safe.
message me your sponsors. I'll put them on the post for tomorrow. Sorry I'm cutting it short, but appreciate y'all being on the show, and we'll see everybody again here next week. Thank y'all.
Hey, be safe.
Man.
Yeah,
See you guys. Good luck.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode here on Paddle and Fin. Be sure to drop a 5-star rating, a thumbs up, or smash that subscribe button on any platform you're listening in on. Be sure to check us out on Waypoint TV, waypointtv.com. Make sure you sign up for the Fantasy Kayak Fishing League at paddleandfin.com/fantasy. You could support this show through Patreon, patreon.com/paddleandfin. Don't forget to check out the website, paddleandfin.com. Catch us on YouTube. If you got a question, comment, or want to see a future guest on the show, be sure to email us at paddleandfin@gmail.com. Shout out to our show supporters, Yak Gadget. You can check out all the fine kayak accessories at yakgadget.com. Pelican Professional. For all your cases, coolers, and lighting needs, go to pelican.com. Rocktown Adventures, your Midwest premier paddle sports destination. Go to rocktownadventures.com. Eastport Marina, the beautiful destination on Dale Hollow Lake. If you're looking for lodging, kayaks, kayak accessories, or anything fishing related on the beautiful Dale Hollow Lake, go to eastport.info. And Jigmasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com and fill your tackle boxes today.